Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalkpot. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we are here this week to talk about episode 369. It's a wrap!
It is, in fact, a wrap on this album and 69 Nice.
It is also a wrap on the year 1996 and a wrap on the book Adventures in Odyssey, the complete guide.
Really?
Yeah. They have, so this was like, hey, we once again are taking a break. That we have finally settled on. We are keeping Wit around. Now we got to figure out what that means for the future.
Yeah, what do we do with them?
So they wind up taking a break. They air a Christmas two-parter that's like weird, called Christmas Around the World Part 1 and 2. It was never released on like a proper album because it was released before the album on a cassette tape. It is like a bunch of songs to sing along to. And somehow that's an Odyssey episode.
Is it like just Christmas carols in other languages, assumably?
Yes, that is my understanding. And so it includes Hal Smith. It was originally released in 94 and gets like put out here.
Interesting.
And then the next episode after that is the one that we'll be covering next week. And that one episode doesn't air until September.
Wow.
So they take a 9-month gap.
Yeah,
to really like figure stuff out. So
hard resetting mid-season, basically.
So right, it feels like it's the weird thing where it's like I feel like for the past, I don't know, 10 episodes we've talked about, I've been like, this one's like when the show is not sure where it's going, and we're still
still there. Yeah, no, and I think that's probably why I feel the way about this episode that I do. Just because it feels so bland. And like, oh yes, we're going to firmly establish Wit is back in the area and being an Odyssey, and it is nothing really special.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah. So this is an episode written by Paul McCusker, directed by Phil Lawler. It aired December 7th of 1996. No one super of note cast-wise. We've got Ryan Devon playing Glenn Adams, which is a character who we've never talked about before. He's in 5 episodes. This is his last one. This is also Lucy's last episode and Sam Johnson's last episode.
Wow.
Lucy does then come back in album 50.
Yeah.
But like, for all intents and purposes, it's Lucy's last album. Or last episode. And it's a wrap.
I guess so. Yeah, this episode, like, and I did clock them bringing back Lucy Cunningham Schultz as, like, kind of a conscious choice just because of how old she would be at this particular juncture in the show. Like, she's one of the early people that interacted a bunch with the Barclays. Like, I'd imagine, when it comes to kids' radio and everything that she's operating in this episode, like, she's got to be at the end of middle school, if not in high school at this point.
Yeah, perhaps. It is unclear because she's still obviously younger than Connie.
Yeah.
Who hasn't graduated. The other thing that's weird about this episode, that I'm just going to set up and then we'll roll the promo and get into it. But this episode was recorded unconventionally. Could you tell, Andrew?
Yes and no. I feel like that might be part of the reason that I don't like this episode.
Spoiler.
Was just the performances felt kind of flat. Were they like recorded remotely and spliced together essentially? Or were they recorded across like 2 different studios and spliced together?
No, it's actually the opposite.
Oh?
They did this recording with people like in the room walking on and off mic. And like had intentional mistakes and mic jostling and whatever to simulate the documentary style thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so like where you get that depth of like people yelling off mic is actually people yelling off mic. You have like Dave Arnold who's like producing this episode or whatever, like yelling from
the other side of the wall, basically.
Correct.
Being like, stop talking about my breakfast.
Yes. Yep.
That's so interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I know that there's, I did clock some of the mic sounds and like the camera noises that, you know, there's no camera, but
Right. So with that that out of the way, I think it's promo time. And then we can get into thoughts.
Documentary, docudrama, you gotta listen to the next adventure in Odyssey. Lucy, Glenn, and the Kids Radio team propel journalism to new heights as they capture a day in the life of Whit's End. Nothing is according to script, especially their update on the return of Whit to Odyssey. Next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
wow.
I mean, you know, it's a bop.
That's fantastic. Doc, you gotta see this. Are you kidding me? That's perfect. Documentary, docudrama.
The episode begins with Lucy.
A wonderful voice that we haven't heard in far too long.
And my note is just Lucy.
Yeah.
With an exclamation point at the end. And that is the only positive note I have about this episode.
Oh, thank goodness.
I'm not
alone.
Yeah, it's Lucy's first appearance since the Blackguard stuff.
Yeah.
Which was 30 episodes ago. So like, yeah, it's been a little bit.
Yeah.
But she's still like part of the show at this point. Like it's not like they're bringing her back from the dead. But yeah, what a bad episode.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like...
Here's the thing. On this album in particular, we have been high on Phil Lawler episodes and low on Paul McCusker episodes, and it is weird. This is a bad McCusker episode.
It was so bad I thought it was Phil Lawler. Like honestly, when he said...
Even stuff that I am more annoyed with as a show, I like better than this. Which is like, we've given McCusker crap from Odyssey is the best policy. But
yeah,
you know what? I would rather listen to that than this.
Yeah.
I listened to this episode twice, and both times I was upset.
No, it's just not good. There's no real movement to it. There's no real development. And like the points that it tries to hit on, it doesn't really hit well or land.
And it feels like it should be a fun concept. I think the idea of like a documentary about Whit's return to Odyssey is a fun concept.
Yeah.
The thing makes two big missteps, which is one, it throws that premise out the window immediately, and two, it puts some kid named Glenn at the center rather than Lucy.
Yeah, like what?
What was this decision?
And why is Glenn here just ruining it all?
Who wants Glenn?
Nobody.
Like, I am so sorry, Glenn and voice actor, who I'm sure are fine. But like, you lead with Lucy, and then you continue to sideline her the rest of the show. And it's not as though you are setting up Glenn to be like somebody, like this is his last episode.
Yeah.
Like it's not like we are passing the baton.
Well, or that they're even doing anything with Glenn, because Glenn doesn't change or grow at all throughout this
everyone's
episode.
just annoyed at Glenn because he's bad at his job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we start out at Hal's Diner, a diner named after Hal Smith.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, this is its first appearance in the show, and they named it for him because Hal Smith was very fond of diners.
I love that, and I wonder if cholesterol related to his demise.
Wow. Cool joke, Andrew.
Hey, it's on brand for the episode. Because Glenn goes in and tears Whit a new one for eating bacon and eggs and toast for breakfast. Talking about getting trigonosis and all kinds of bad juju from undercooked meat. And it's where you get... it is Dave Arnold?
Yeah. Dave Arnold is the owner, and then you do is Hal himself, and then you have Phil Lawler as the customer.
Just yelling from the other side of the wall, being like, "Hey, watch it."
Yeah. Yep. I mean, look, Dave Arnold as Hal is a great performance.
Yeah,
in this episode.
it was really funny, and the fact that they, like you said, they did the practical effect of having him actually shout through a wall.
Yeah,
makes it all the better.
Yeah, it's good, and it makes me sad that we don't get Hal in more episodes. You know.
Yeah.
He's so well established. He appears in one other episode, and he's not voiced by Dave Arnold when he does.
Is he in the Green Ring Conspiracy at all?
No, but he's in an episode from around that time.
Okay.
There's an episode called The Amazing Loser. Which is Green Ring era.
Okay.
But not Green Ring.
I don't remember the name, but I feel like I've heard him speak.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're establishing that Wick goes to Hal's Diner 2 or 3 days a week, which is very like old person core.
Yeah, 100%. And I aspire to it. Like, honestly, that sounds delightful.
Dude, when I was growing up and there was like the couple of old guys who always hung out at the cafe, I'm like, oh,
yeah, man.
That's the life right there.
No, I mean, yeah, working at the coffee shop that I worked at for years, there's like the same 20, 25 old dudes that were retired that would, get their newspaper, get their regular order and just sit there for hours and, shoot the breeze with people in town. And I'm like, man, not a care in the world. I mean, clearly they're upset about something because they're yelling, but like, just being able to live life with that kind of leisure, I do. Yeah. What is it? It's not idolify. What's to make an idol out of something?
Idolize.
Thank you. Idolify. Thank you.
A word so far off that I couldn't figure out what it meant.
Idolize. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do idolize just being an old person and eating out breakfast.
Yeah. Yep. And so, yeah, we then... Yeah,
he's got his diner, or I'm sorry, he's got his diner. He's got his Bible there.
Right, but but we also have Glenn being terrible at his job and just like making fun of the food and being like, wait, you shouldn't be eating eggs and toast and coffee?
Yeah, I think it's bacon.
So Whit doesn't say bacon, Glenn does.
Oh.
But
yeah, so if there's just eggs, toast, and coffee, which is...
Even if there's bacon, let the man have his breakfast. That is not a crazy breakfast.
No, it's not particularly unhealthy either. Yeah. Presuming he's not eating, 6 strips of bacon and, 4 eggs.
Right, and so Whit's reading his Bible, or he has his Bible there, and Glenn asks him about it, and... Whit says, he's reading John 9 and starts to try and talk about that. And then Glenn just side rails it by trying side rails. Not derails or sidelines, but side rails.
Side rails. My favorite part of bowling.
He just kind of wrecks it by being like, hey, I can't believe they allow you to have a Bible here. And Lucy's got off screen yelling that's not the point of the story, Glenn.
Yeah.
Glenn is just bad at his job. And every time Whit starts to say something I care about, Glenn interrupts. And he's not funny. He's just annoying.
Yes.
And that is so much of the problem of this episode. Because, right, we cut back to Whit's end then. And we've got Whit. And he's talking about how, Connie and Eugene have grown. And so,
that's good. I like that part.
I do, too. And he talks with Connie about how she's grown. And with Eugene. And the whole, thing about, oh, yeah, Eugene used to always feel like he had to get the last word in. And then we cut to Eugene, having to get the last word in. And I'm all right, that's kind of a fun bit. This episode has some moments. Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, that they're loose. But what you said, as far as it feels like this episode was trying to be so funny with so many jokes all the time, and really only 1 out of 6 of them land.
If that.
The
problem with this episode, right, is that it is a comedy episode that is wholly unfunny.
Yeah. Because it doesn't make any sense.
And we're coming off of a bunch of good, heartfelt, build out the story episodes.
Well, and this is them bringing the kids into the situation because, Whit coming back has all been viewed through the lens of adults up until this point.
Correct. There has not been a kid in sight for a long time.
Exactly. And so we just get, this terrible traveling circus of an episode that, doesn't really even highlight the kids whose relationships with Whit we want to see more about.
And I think I'm so annoyed about it because it's a good premise.
Yeah. With good cast.
Like you've got a killer cast, you've got like good kids. The idea of like the kids do a documentary about Whit coming back to Odyssey feels like a good idea. However, it feels like they sat down and like McCusker sat down and went, okay, I've got no ideas on what we could possibly talk about. Let's just be funny instead.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does not work.
We don't actually care about our main character.
No,
Let's just sidetrack him
good.
with irrelevant jokes from, half-beat characters.
Sidetrack or side rail, I've heard it both ways. And so, yeah, then we get them talking to Sam. Sam's going to go talk to Whit for advice because he found a wallet.
Yep.
And Glenn just sucks again in this. I feel bad being so harsh on a child, but come on, Glenn.
He's not trying. It doesn't seem.
So yeah, it's just Glenn's annoying. Sam has found this wallet. There's $300 in it. He doesn't know what to do with it. He feels bad because he didn't turn it in earlier. Then Harlow shows up, and we have one of the other jokes that lands for me in this episode, which is Connie just saying, look, before this gets confusing.
Yeah.
And then trailing off, because here's the other thing. This is a Harlow episode more than it's a Whit episode, and it's all bad.
This
is the worst Harlow episode.
No, yeah, it's the same beat of Harlow over and over again.
Yes.
I'm just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me ignore these children so I can not know what I'm doing.
Yes, yeah, and it turns out, I very quickly was like, oh, this is going to be Harlow's wallet, and it for sure is. And there's this whole convoluted thing where he sold a lunchbox to put money in the wallet, but then he doesn't think the money is his. He thinks the lunchbox was stolen, and he thinks that the wallet's someone else, and he has no identification in the wallet so that it can't be tied to him.
Because he's a private eye.
Right. It's just, it's so exhausting. Will Ryan's giving a good performance, but I do not care.
No, yeah, and it's the worst part about this episode is that it is Will Ryan really trying to do his best with absolutely nothing.
And which just kind of gets shelved at this point, because we gotta have Harlow antics, and then we have Sam, I guess Sam has the conversation with Whit where he's like, I feel guilty because I wanted to buy a bowling ball with this money, but then I decided to turn it in, and Whit's like, well, it's not a sin to be tempted.
Yeah.
You ultimately resisted the temptation. So good work.
Yeah.
Which is a sentiment I approve of and appreciate.
No, certainly. Well, and especially as a kid, when you are experiencing temptations like that for the first time and you feel a really strong internal compulsion to do something that is wrong, that can be really scary and strange. So the fact that Whit's there to talk to them about it is nice, and I do appreciate that.
And then, here's another part. This is the other thing that's going on at this point in the episode, which is another reason where I'm just like, man, even the stuff they're going for just doesn't work for me. I hate knives so much in the knife going into a person and cutting a person thing. Just really is really unsettling for me, and I get gross tingles, and I'm just not a fan.
The sound of stabbing.
No, stabbing's not as bad. Slicing. I don't like the idea of slicing skin.
Yeah.
Really just wigs me out.
Okay, that's fair.
Did
you need a lot of stitches as a child?
No.
Did you ever? Okay.
No, I never did.
Oh, then maybe that's
I am a stitchless man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Punctures don't bother me nearly as much as a slice.
That's fair.
Just
if it's peeling away.
I don't mind. Yep. No, freaking Adam Driver and Marriage Story stuff. I just not for me.
No. Oh my God.
And so, it just Connie cuts herself not once but twice while slicing bananas because Harlow like startles her.
Yeah.
And it's
the first time is a joke, and then the second time is a joke because she's reenacting the first joke, and it's just so
and
predictable.
I was sitting there right as soon as Lucy's like, "Can you demonstrate how you cut yourself before?" I was just like, "Oh no, she's gonna cut herself again." And I was just sitting in anticipation and horror, and
Then Harlow comes in, and ow, I did it again. Blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
I'm like,
Yes.
oh my gosh.
Yep.
Just friggin' put me under already.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's good stuff in this episode. It feels like it's all thrown out for the sake of jokes that don't land. And it's diluted. Like, all of the stuff that Whit talks about, Connie and Eugene growing is like really important and cool, and a cool way to end the album. And it's a great way to, kind of set up what they're doing now. And I wish that was more of the focal piece, was, talking about how how Whit's End has grown and changed without Whit, and how Whit has grown and changed without Whit's End.
Yep.
And this is, instead what we get is like, oh yeah, the kids are back in town and they don't really even care about Whit either. Like,
yeah. It is such a just nothing episode. And it ends on this note of like, where Lucy asks Whit, what do you think tomorrow will be like? Mm-hmm. He says, I suppose it will be a typical day in Odyssey. And she says, what do you mean by a typical day? He says, anything can happen. That's what I like about this place. And it's like a nice note to end on.
Yeah.
And like and Chris's outro is like pretty sentimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like the rest of the episode just doesn't care about that.
It's terrible.
And I do.
No, it's really frustrating. And like, we even get the moment where Glenn's like trying to figure out how Whit does, how he gives advice, and he's like asking for a formula. It's like, oh, I don't have a formula, I just blah 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 blah.
Yes.
And like, that's a sweet moment for Whit, where he's like actually being very real and down to earth. And like, I understand that they're playing it for laughs, and it's to be a setup, but it really shouldn't be, because like what it's supposed to be doing is highlighting the value that Whit brings. And like, we don't really get to hear that side of Whit. Like, we don't get to talk to Whit about his advice giving process with kids. Like, and that's like one of the things that we always give him crap for, is talking about stuff he doesn't know anything about, or talking to kids he can't relate to. And
there's a lot of potential in this episode that just goes untouched.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because like, they glance it, they kind
of
look at it, and they're like, nah.
Yeah, but the kids are not interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
There is a moment towards the end where Whit is very exhausted by Harlow, and that brought me some joy.
That's fair. It's nice to not feel alone in some things.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, Connie has to get stitches in the emergency room. Glenn goes with her for that. That's great.
He faints.
And passes out. Yes, we
can't
get out of this episode.
After teasing girls, after like saying like, oh, girls are so prone to fainting, and then he faints, and they have to get smelling salts, and it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bad joke, and it's just bad in general. Like, yeah, as soon as he brought it up, I was like, okay, yep, he's gonna pass out, and then... Yeah, the acting isn't particularly fantastic.
Yeah.
Deep sigh. I feel so bad for Whit and for Lucy. She deserves so much better.
Yeah. It's such a bummer to end what has been a really good album and a bunch of episodes we've really cared about.
Yeah.
To just be like, well, and then there's this one.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I was plotting this out and I was kind of like looking over these episodes, I was like, like just glancing through the description of like the summary of this episode from the Complete Guide is like Lucy and the kids radio team take an in-depth look at Whit's End and the return of John Avery Whittaker. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect episode to include in this whole arc. Mm-hmm. And then I listened to it and was like, well, now I want to talk about it, but not for good reasons.
Yeah. This is the perfect episode to absolutely tear apart inside this arc.
Yeah. Yeah, it can't all be bangers.
No, certainly. And yeah. We had so many strong ones on this episode. It's unfortunate to end on a low note.
But yeah, there's more to come.
Certainly. Yeah.
Andrew, anything else you feel like you gotta get off your chest about this one? Any notes that I blew through my notes on this episode.
Yeah,
so. This is I did not take many notes because I was just so I did not care.
Yeah, I listened to this episode, I want to say 3 times. So I listened to it once on accident, not knowing that we were going to cover it. And then I listened to it again, and then just for fun. And then I listened to it a 3rd time, and took notes. And I tried, every single time thinking that I was going to like it more. And I think I liked it less.
Yeah, I for sure. I did not get anything out of it the first time, but I thought maybe I'm being too hard on it. I wasn't giving it my full attention.
Yeah.
I'll listen through it again and see what happens, and then I liked it less.
So I fell asleep during it the first time that I listened to it accidentally, and then when I listened to it again, I was like, oh well, maybe I just wasn't paying attention enough to like it or whatever. And yeah, I listened to it again. I'm like, no, I actually understand when people say that the joke machine nature of Odyssey doesn't work for them all the time. This was one of the episodes that it became a very, very apparent to me the kind of problems that we had with Aloha Oi and all of that, where it's just okay.
I liked Aloha Oi better.
Yeah, that's fair.
Aloha Oi actually has jokes that land.
True. It also has Don, Iowa.
Thank you for using his Christian name, Andrew.
No problem. Yeah, no, it is tough. I don't think I have anything to add other than I look forward to putting this in my memory.
Yep. Then do you have anything to plug, Andrew?
Oh, have we plugged Asteroid City yet?
Yes.
Don't.
This is the third time you've tried to plug it. You plugged it before we saw it.
True.
And then you plugged it again after we had seen it. And now
I just
twice now. It's the only thing you think about. Hey,
every day.
This is a documentary episode, Andrew. Any documentaries you're fond of?
Oh, actually, yeah. There's a new Netflix documentary called Quarterback out that's pretty good if you like sports. Honestly, I feel like it's pretty compelling drama if you don't care about sports. If you love somebody that likes it and wants to watch it, I feel like this is a pretty good entry point for somebody who's married to a football fan or whatever. Because it's more about the people, and yeah, it's really well done. I watched the first episode of it last night. Also, Arnold has he's got a 3-part documentary that just came out on Netflix that's all about his life and his accomplishments, and I watched that as well, and that was interesting. What about you, Dylan? You watch any documentaries?
Well, I don't want to. I love a documentary, but I don't want to plug it. Here, you know what? I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to plug one. I don't know. There's so many good documentaries, but the one that has had some of the longest staying power for me is They Shall Not Grow Old, which is a Peter Jackson direct documentary about World War I. That is where he goes crazy in depth to restore World War I footage to try and make it look contemporary and just paint a true day in the life picture of these soldiers, these children who were put into battle.
17-year-olds.
in World War I. And it's really, really freaking good, and I think about it a lot.
Interesting.
And so,
is it on anything that you?
There will be links in the description,
okay.
But yeah. But anyways, so I'll put that as my serious documentary recommend. The other recommendation, though, I would like to make is Documentary Now.
Yeah.
If you want to hear a comedy documentary done right, Documentary Now
all they do
is a show that I absolutely adore. It was started by Seth Meyers and Fred Armisen and Bill Hader to do uber specific parodies of documentaries. They have been doing, there are 4 seasons at this point. They're 6 or 7 episodes apiece, half-hour episodes for the most part. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty light and breezy show. It's so good. You do not have to have seen the documentaries that they are riffing on to enjoy it, but if you have, it is that much more powerful. None of the episodes connect, well, for the most part, connect to each other. There are occasional two-parters, but like that's it. I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a jumping on point, season 3, episode 3, which is Co-op, the original cast recording, is always the one that I pitch to people as like, if you see this and vibe with any part of it, you are so in for the show. It is fantastic. That is John Mulaney, comedian who I love, has written many an episode of documentary now as well. I adore it. I think it's one of the great shows. Yeah. And if you're in the US, it is all on Netflix and has been for years and years. Like, it feels like it really has a home there. Despite being an IFC show.
Yeah, and never being bought by Netflix or having any real official ties, but yeah, IFC loves it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my recommendation for this episode. That's my plug, as we say here on the pod. And with all that being said, we will be back next week for episode 372, For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, Part 1.
Bye, guys.
Bye.